You're on.
All right, late night from Willowdale, and yeah, I didn't really want to do a video because our show started in Willowdale, and Willowdale went through a horrible circumstance on Monday with a guy ramming his truck down Yonge Street and killing 10 people and injuring 15 others. So I didn't really want to do a video, but Clete said we should do a video. This is where our whole thing started in Willowdale, young and Finch. So yeah, but I'm gonna keep it short. So it's horrible what happened on Monday in Willowdale, where I grew up, where Clete and I started this video, and but let's not sensationalize this, okay? Like some crazed person decided to ram a truck down Yonge Street and kill a lot of people. That's just a crazy guy who has issues. So let's just leave it for what it was. It's the crime. It's a crime story. The fact that people have tried to, the media, the Canadian media and CNN, the international media has tried to relate this to international terrorism. International terrorism being AKA Muslims and ISIS and anyone related to the Middle East, Arabs.
There's a whole story on right wingers begging for it to be terrorism.
Yeah,
almost.
they want it to be so-called terrorism, but terrorism is terrorism. If you get held up at the local 7-Eleven, that's terrorism. If you get shot up in a nightclub in the entertainment district, that's terrorism. Terrorism is terrorism. If you're terrorized, you're terrorized.
Or frightened.
Or frightened. So, terrorism is such a stupid, loaded word. And I think finally the media is beginning to see that, because even in the coverage on Monday, they wanted to stay away from that word. But there's still, you could tell there was almost dismay in the Canadian media and CNN and everything, because it wasn't linked to so-called terrorism. Terrorism being Muslims, brown people, all-skinned people. Like, oh God, the whole thing was so pathetic. They almost felt they were disappointed that this guy was just kind of mentally, I hate to use that word, but he had issues.
No,
but
there's
he
nothing.
wasn't linked.
Yeah.
He wasn't linked to any sort of group in the Middle East. He wasn't linked to ISIS, and he wasn't brown. He wasn't olive skinned, and you could tell there was almost a sense of disappointment in the Canadian media, because Canadian media can't be part of the international sort of like, oh my God, Canada's now part of this. We're all part of this. What happened in Paris and Brussels and London, and yeah, the whole thing is so pathetic, sad. A guy who had issues rented a van and plowed down a bunch of people on Yonge Street, and it's a crime story. That's all it is. Just a crime story. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. All it is a crime story. All right, that's all it is. There's nothing else. And people want to play it into something broader or greater, because they want it to be such. That's so horrible. And the media is so wanting it to be bigger than it was.
It's a modern grand narrative, right?
Modern
it's like a Jesus Christ story almost.
Exactly. And everyone, the local media wants Toronto to be part of this narrative of international terrorism. The whole thing is so pathetic, it's beyond the pale. Terrorism is when you're terrorized. So, if you're involved in a holdup at the local 7-Eleven or someone mugs you, you're terrorized. So terrorism is about being terrorized. It's no grander issue. This word is so overloaded, and it's racist, and because it's aimed at Muslims, it's aimed at brown people, and yeah, I don't even want to go there. What happened on Yonge Street, I feel violated. I grew up in Willowdale. Clete and I started the show in Willowdale. I feel violated by this act of wackiness and nuttiness, but that's what it is, an act of wackiness and nuttiness, and people died. But that's all it is. And it's a crime. All it is a crime story. It's no different than somebody shooting up a nightclub in the entertainment district. It's just a crime story. And because they used a van, and a van has been used in Europe and other places to commit violence on so-called acts of, ISIS, whatever. It's just a crime story. That's all it is. It's just the guy who's disturbed and decided to take it out on a bunch of innocents, and he ran down Yonge Street and killed a bunch of people. And that's all it is. It's a crime story. That's all it is there's no greater story than that. It's not linked to any sort of quote unquote international terrorism. It's not quoted to religion. It's just a crime story. But the fact that people are anticipating it is just bizarre. What a weird world we live in. And yeah. And the sensationalizing in the media. You know, you can't even turn on your TV. You won't be able to turn on your TV for 3 days because that's all it's going to be. And it reminds me of this situation in Saskatchewan with the hockey players. Like that.
Another one.
Another one where they, not a crime story. Well, we don't know. We still don't know the full details of what, you know, we all know that truck drivers and truck accidents are pretty, you know, we don't know what's going on. The trucking industry is pretty bad. We know they're responsible for a lot of nasty accidents across North America. And so we still don't have the full details of what happened in Saskatchewan. So that could be a crime story. But the bottom line is we know a lot of young hockey players died. But the media milked this, and particularly the Toronto Star, they milked this. And they milked human emotion. And frankly, I find that's disgusting. Just like what's going to go on here with Yonge Street. The media will just milk it, milk it, and milk it. And you don't really have to. And who tunes into this on 24-hour coverage? Like, tune it out. Like, I tuned it out yesterday. I can only handle so much. Who tunes into this? But yeah, the media tends to milk this stuff. It's, I know, and you know, they think it sells, but you know, at some point people do tune it out. They find it way too much. And so what happened in Saskatchewan, I think a lot of people felt that coverage was way over the top. And this stuff on Yonge Street, different story, but again, it's going to be way over the top. And people are going to just tune out after a while. So, yeah, I guess my point is the media does tend to sensationalize these things. And you need to tune it out. I think the bigger stories of the day are, is Donald Trump going to sign on to the Iran nuclear deal? You know, Trump said some of the craziest things today in the White House. How Iran is the most vile country on the planet Earth, basically.
You can hear that Bolton influence, right?
Yeah, exactly. Iran is responsible for the most nefarious things. We've talked about it on this video show. Iran is hated by the right wing in the United States, and it influences Trump's opinion. And Macron and Merkel and May, they've tried to say, hey, this nuclear deal is working for everybody. Iran is actually adhering to the deal. The only country that's not adhering to the Iran nuclear deal, surprise, surprise, the United States. They're already violating it by not allowing American companies to trade with Iran. So the only country that's actually violated the deal is the United States. But that doesn't get played up in the American media. No one talks about that. It's just about how Iran has violated everything, but Iran has not violated anything. The facts don't matter. The facts don't matter. Iran has adhered to the tenets of the deal, verified by the international nuclear agencies, verified by the European powers. Iran has adhered to the deal. The only country that hasn't adhered to the deal?
The United States.
Is the United States. So there you go. But that doesn't matter. It's, you know, the American media is obtuse, and the right-wing American media is basically, well, yeah, they would make Hitler's propaganda agencies like, you know, like pathetic compared to what, you know, Fox and all the rest of them. Oh my God. So Macron is trying to tell Trump, adhere to the deal. Like, because you can't go to North Korea and talk about a deal with North Korea and then basically throw the one with Iran out the window. Because, like, come on.
Well, he's already
you want to deal with North Korea, you got to show that deals work, and you stand up for your deals. You can't ask Kim Jong-un to sign a nuclear deal when you're basically throwing the one with Iran out the window because no one trusts you. So the whole thing is so pathetic, and the American media is so supine. They just don't. They don't. They just don't. They don't see the facts. They don't read the facts. Like the only country that's in violation of the Iran nuclear deal is the United States, not Iran. They've held to their bargain. And the hatred of Iran in the United States and the American media is so over the top. It's not rational. It's just, and Trump might abrogate this agreement on May 12th, and that'll just send the world into another tailspin. And it's just, that's the big issue, in my opinion, of the day. Horrible as what happened on Yonge Street on Monday. That's the big issue, like sending the world into another tailspin with dramatic consequences. And Trump can't go into a meeting with Kim Jong-un after he repudiates the Iran deal, because Kim Jong-un, why would he sign anything with the United States? He doesn't. They're not to be trusted. They're not to be trusted. So yeah, I hope Macron. There seem to be boyfriends there, Macron and Trump hugging each other and doing whatever. I hope Macron can knock some sense into him. Everybody in the world thinks the Iran nuclear deal is a good thing, except for Trump. He plays to a base that is ignorant and stupid, and I don't know what. It's not doing him any good. I mean, and the facts don't seem to matter. And yeah, I don't even want to go on. I said in a previous video, I don't want to go on about Trump, but this Iran nuclear deal matters. And yeah, it matters. This is the big story of the day. Will Trump stay or not stay? And the fact the Iranians have done nothing really wrong. Yeah, they're meddlesome in the Middle East, but the biggest culprits in the Middle East are Saudi Arabia. I've said this many times. An American and Canadian ally. The biggest culprits, Yemen, 15,000 people dead in the last few years. That's a Saudi-led effort to just butcher people, and nobody cares. So the biggest culprits in the Middle East are the Saudis. They've always been, and now they have an alliance with Israel, and it's a mess. And Iran is not perfect by any means. Are you kidding? They're not. But they're not the biggest culprits in what's going on in the Middle East. They've adhered to the deal with the European powers, Russia and China. They've adhered to it. The only people who haven't, it's the Americans. I'm going to end this up going back to, again, what I said in a previous video. We look at the tragedies in Toronto and what happened in Saskatchewan with the hockey players. Remember, and we haven't even talked, Clete and I have talked about this, we haven't even talked, 15,000 dead in Yemen. Thousands are dead in the Eastern Congo in a civil war that nobody talks about. Lots of people dead in North Africa and all these different wars. But yeah, Syria still stands out. A blood-stained image on the planet Earth. 470,000 dead in 70 years. The city the size of Hamilton. Okay, 470,000 dead. And there's no end in sight to that conflict. And nobody cares. Not Macron, not Trump, nobody. So just
it's a country you don't really need to care about. They have nothing, right?
No, they don't, except historical legacies and
Damascus. Yeah, but who cares? Yeah, but who cares about that? I'm being sarcastic, by the way. Yeah.
Damascus and Aleppo are two of the oldest cities on the planet Earth. Palmyra is one of the great Roman cities. I mean, yeah, Syria doesn't have a lot of resources. You're right. Some oil, not much. Some agriculture, not much. But still was a country. And yeah, as we said, Humpty Dumpty ain't coming back. That country will never be the same again. But to end the carnage, you could do it. It would take just a little international cooperation, but that ain't gonna happen. So yeah, so that's why I see what happens on Yonge Street in our own city, where it's part of the world where I grew up, and then I see what happened in Humboldt and Saskatchewan. Horrible, tragic, but boy, the world's a nasty place. And there's far bigger tragedies going on elsewhere. And I do know that all news is local, but we kind of need to keep things in perspective.
Okay.